2 squared, 2 drops, 2 twin, twit. Word is up. So yeah, 2 squared, 2 drops, 4 2 drops to potentially win. Not today, I guess with tomorrow, but we're looking at 2 drops today. The past few reveals, and I kind of want to talk about 2 drops in general, quick first, and that is, I think you've seen in Frostfall, the 2 drops definitely got a decent spike in usability, or at least you can say I can see why you would use this 2 drop now as opposed to something like Gettable or Sakurasaur. Those cards you really don't use. I think with Frostfall you see 2 drops got pushed a bit more. I think you saw that Pangwat got pushed a bit more. So let's go into a bunch of 2 drops that got revealed over this week and talk about 2 drops in general and their place in Elestrals. So let's just jump into the first few cards and we'll talk more as we go. Starting with Reros, a 4/6 for 1 Thunder, 1 Frost. You can expend Frost in order to target and special ascend your Reros to this Reros from your hand. When an Elestral that is not Thunder Enchanted declares an attack, you can expend Thunder in order to negate that attack. So let's start about the quick ascending. We saw this on Gigaflora for Giraflora. So it's a way to basically get 2 drops into play quicker with specific ascension lines. So it's kind of nice to see the promotion of the ascension lines mattering a bit more from the 1s to 2s, because there's not a ton of synergy between the 1 cost of a line and the 2 cost of lines. This is kind of forcing where it's okay, Reros goes to Reros. Gigaflora off Giraflora. So it's nice to see fast ways to get out 2 drops, efficient ways, quote unquote, you do go down in cards in hand, and the 2 drops have relevant abilities. So Reros, when an Elestral that is not Thunder Enchanted declares attack, you can expend Thunder in order to negate that attack. That is extremely relevant in a lot of cases because Thunder generally doesn't have high attack stats. Now Thunder 2 drops can beat over this for sure, but this is going to be stopping any Thunder 1 drop because it has 6 defense and Thunder doesn't have high attack stats. That's kind of what Thunder is all about. It's just low stats, good abilities in a sense. So generally you can't get over this with Thunder 1 drop unless you have Zeus in play. If you're playing Thunder though, you're basically don't care about Reros' effect. However, if you're not playing Thunder, that's when Reros is supposed to be pretty good, right? So you're stopping anything that's not Thunder Enchanted. People don't tech Thunder Spirits as often anymore as they used to way back in the early phase when people actually played Reros and where they would play a Thunder Enchanted Necra for Sorlet to beat over it. That's not relevant anymore. So teching Thunder Spirits might be relevant if you expect to go into Reros, but I don't think Reros is something you need to worry about. Because it's a 4/6, 6 is a good wall. Because it has 4 attack, I don't think Reros will be impactful enough in the meta to see a ton of play. Maybe some sideboard play against 5 guys or maybe against Earth Beaters. But Earth Beaters, I mean, maybe. Anyway, the reason I don't think this is going to be relevant again, 4 attack. So if this could stay in attack position, attack things, and then negate the crackback, it would be a much stronger card. However, because it has 4 attack, it going into attack position to hit over things, it's not going to be able to go over most of your aggressive 1-drops, any defensive 1-drops. It can't even get over Clovey, right? But because it can't put an aggressive face on and negate the attacks coming back at it, I don't see this seeing a ton of play. It might be a good tech card or a sideboard option for some decks against aggressive attack decks that don't run Thunder, but even then it gets Earthquaked. It might get Boom Batted, it might get Kinleo'd. We might see some Kinleo pop up because there might be some Fire Nexus with Comagma and Kinleos or whatnot. It gets outed really easily by a lot of removal, so yeah, I don't think it's going to be super great, but it is a pretty cool wall that I expect to see some side play, but I don't think you ever make this your deck. Because it's too easy to get rid of, it's too easy to counter. You're still taking damage by negating the attacks by expending your Thunder every turn. So it's still, I don't think it's doing enough, but it could be a fun defensive tool for some decks to get going. We'll see where that goes. Moving on to Neander Sloth, a 6/5 for 2 Earth. When this Neander Sloth destroys an opponent's Celestial in battle, that opponent must discard 2 cards from their hand. While Titanostalk is in your underworld, this Neander Sloth gets 7 attacks. So let's talk about Titanostalk first. It doesn't see any play. It saw some fringe play. it's too slow, where it has a really good effect, but at the same time, expending Earth every turn to see your opponent's hand after turn 1. Like, if you're going first, Titanic Stalk is a good card. Going first, Titanic Stalk is good. I will take that to my grave. It's every other turn, Titanic Stalk is bad. So people don't really play it because unless you're going for high rolly turn 1, like Titanic Stalk, let me see exactly what you're doing for the next 2 turns, it's not good. It's a 4 defense wall. That's kind of what it comes down to. Is it worth playing Titanic Stalk for Neander Sloth's attack buff? No, I don't think that is either. I don't think it's that. Even though 7 attack is huge, it puts it at 13. Playing Titanic Stalk for Neander Sloth, I don't think is good enough to do for that attack buff. However, Neander Sloth destroying an opponent's Elestral in battle, that opponent must discard 2 cards from their hand. That is a really, really good effect in some matchups. Like, again, we're pretty heavy counter meta, so people are going to be putting a lot of cards face down. But what this can do is, if your opponents are leaving like Laurels or Earthquake in the hand, it probably hits it, because they're probably going turn 1 Elestral set 2, and then they have 2 or 3 cards left in the hand. So if you can force this to attack over things and actually connect, it's really good. And you do it 2 times in the game, it's so much card advantage. However, it still needs to connect, and it needs to destroy Elestrals. At 6 attack, it can get over most 1-drops. At 5 defense, it can protect itself from most 1-drops. So if it gets tsunami'd, it's still gonna stick. However, it gets shielded, it gets poison tipped arrow, too low basically. It goes to 4 with poison tipped arrow, so it's gonna get outed by poison tipped arrow, and it's not gonna be able to hit over anything. Gorgon stops it. There's just too many counters to deal with this card, where I don't think it's gonna be good. If you're playing against Earth Beaters, which usually gets a pretty swarmy board, not as many counter runes in play as like saying something like Thunder Nexus consistently, you still have to deal with their Tectorus that is now going to be 6 attack that Neander Sloth can't hit because you have 2 Earth Spirit, they have the Earth Spirit. It barely beats over Viserys, so they have 2 Viserys, you're not beating over the attack position 1. I think it's clunky in that sense, but if you can make it work with things like Helios Chariot Ride, Chains of Prometheus, so on and so forth, where you kind of can go up 1 card, where you basically, this counts as 2 cards because you have to send it, and then you can destroy a card and force your opponent to discard 2. So that's a +1 card advantage if this connects, and you still have the body on board, so you can probably say +2 card advantage if it connects. I think it's a good card. I just don't know how efficient it's going to be and how consistent you're going to be able to crack into things. Its stats are kind of weak for a 2-drop, or I should say its stats are very weak for a 2-drop, especially when 2-drops in Earth have crazy high stats, like Lotagon 7-8, Sakura even is a 6-8. Like, Earth 2-drops have way better stats, and I think there's better 2-drops to play in Earth now with like Gigaflora and stuff to try to generate advantage as opposed to Neander Sloth. So I don't think it's going to see a ton of play, but I think it'll see some tech play here and there for some matchups maybe. But it's a cool card. I think it's good enough to see play. I just don't think it's good enough to be extremely competitive. Moving on to Pangwat. It's a bridge, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. It's a 5/7 for 1 Frost, 1 Thunder. During your draw phase, which is similar to Sirikun, you can disenchant a Frost or Thunder from your field to special send this Pangwat to Emperor from your hand or deck. So it's got decent stats, and that's about all it's got going for it as a bridge. It's a slow bridge because it has to be done in draw phase, so kind of like Sirikun, you get into it. The worst part about Pangwat is that you have to hard ascend into it because Snowwaddle does search it. That's fair. You can search a Pangwat out pretty efficiently. Rice Ridge can also be searched by Snowwaddle. However, you have to hard ascend in this card and then wait a turn. It's too many points of interaction for, I think, this to be good enough. At least to make up for it, it has a good attack stat where it can potentially attack things the turn it comes into play, and a really good defense stat for a 2-drop at 7 is pretty solid. The other reason I don't think this card's going to see play is it actively is antithetical to Emperor's ability, where Emperor wants you to Nexus as all your spirits, and you want to get to 6 in Emperor so that you can disenchant 3 and keep it in play and blow up the board. This removes a spirit from the board in order to get Emperor out. So now you have less chance of actually getting all those spirits on board for Emperor's ability to be able to be used. So it's just, I don't think it's a good bridge. I think the best thing going for it again, it's a 5/7, it's searchable. I don't think that's good enough for this card to see play. I think there's way better ways to get Emperor out over Pangwat. The only reason you play this to play Emperor is that this is searchable, so it's going to be a more consistent way to find Emperor in a sense. I don't think Pangwat's good. Probably one of the worst 2-drops we've seen in the set, if not the worst 2-drop we've seen in the set so far. And lastly, Illi, an 8/4 for 2 Frost. When this Illi destroys an opponent's Elestral in battle, you can expend Frost in order to destroy each of that opponent's Elestrals. This is a really cool card. I don't know how many matchups it's going to be relevant for. I mean, you have Earth Beaters, which can go pretty wide. Fire can do like a Nectar stuff to go kind of wide. Very rarely are you getting more than a 2-for-1 with this card, which means you're going even on cards. So Illi is going basically 2 cards because then you have to send it for 2 cards because you're probably only popping 2 cards with it. But, you know, there's things again like Helios Chariot Ride, Chains of Prometheus, like those cards will let you get in with this card. However, this card really only works once because your opponent's generally not going to be able to reflood the board with Illi in play. So after the first turn that you cast this card, it's an 8/4 beater. That's all it's really going to do for the rest of the game. It's almost impossible for that effect to be relevant after the first turn you play this card. Like maybe you play like a Frost Water deck where you're tsunami your opponent, they get to like 3 cards, you drop Illi, you wipe their board because you Helios or something so that Illi connects. And then what? They play 1 Elestral, you run over it. They play 1 Elestral, you run over it. They play 1 Elestral, up, now my Illi is bounced. As crazy as this effect seems, it's only relevant sometimes when your opponent goes wide, and when you're kind of behind, and if you're set up for Illi to connect, and then it's just an 8/4 beater after that. So I don't think Illi is going to be crazy strong, but I could see it being a tech option against potential swarm decks. Like if people are playing Ursas, this is a way to wipe all the Ursas since Ursas can swarm pretty well. It's a counter card against maybe Earth Beaters where you can knock out all the Visirises at once. Any deck that goes super wide. It's a counter against, I think, Frost Swarm, which we'll probably see play because you have and Frost decks to cast like a Catarant, then Kione to get the Enfrosted back to cast another 1-drop from your Underworld. So it's going to be relevant if going super wide decks are going to consistently see play, and there's a few that are on the horizon where again Earth Beaters goes kind of wide. Frost, I would probably have a go wide deck. Ursas go wide. If any of these decks are consistent, Meta and Frostfall, a Frost deck might run 1 or 2 of these in the sideboard just to slot in to go gotcha if it connects. So yeah, it's an 8/4 beater that might board wipe the first turn it's played. I don't know if that's good enough, but it's a really cool card. But I did want to come back to talking about 2-drops and 3-drops in Frostfall in general. So far we've seen a definite power bump to 2s and 3s in the set and ways to get out 2s and 3s more efficiently. We see things like Gigaflora and Rice Ridge being able to quick ascend from their first stage or ascension line, whatever we want to call that. Something like Emperor Walk can combo out into like all these Nexus things, which is cool. I like to see more 2s and 3s come out. However, they're always going to kind of be checked by Earthquake. They're always going to kind of be checked by Poison Tipped Arrow. Poison Tipped Arrow is a little bit more hurtful because you're taking like 3-4 damage from it when you're casting it, so it's a little bit less efficient than Earthquake. But yeah, Earthquake is going to be pretty disruptive to any 2 or 3 cost decks pretty much for all of time, and resting on your laurels, right? So removal is really, really powerful, but those are invoke removals that you're mostly worried about. These cards are starting to have very impactful effects that is either super impactful the turn that they hit, like Emperor Watt. It hits board, opponent can't respond to it, it blows everything up, which is really good. And then if your opponent Earthquakes Emperor Watt after, well, you just blew up the whole board. You have things like Gigaflora, where Gigaflora is like, if you don't remove it right away, you're not going to really be able to remove it because it's big defense wall that's going to keep summoning threats. So we definitely see an increase in 2-drop power, which I think is really cool to see. Or pretty much like 2/3 of the set right now. I can't think of off the top of my head if there's any other 2-drops coming out to be released, but like I think we're starting to see 2s and 3s be better. Now, is that power creep or complexity creep? Which I think is going to be something that people probably bring up as the game progresses. I mean, power creep is always something that people are worried about progressively through the game. But I think in reality, it's not that 2s and 3s are going to get power creep and be stronger. I think the reality of The matter is most of the 2s and 3s in base set are just not strong enough to begin with. Sakurasaur is not really playable. Capricle's barely playable. Falcane is barely playable because of the meta. And then you have things like Gadabolt that's not playable. Medursa, not playable in set 1. Maybe set 2 playable with Ursa Den. The Band-Aid, but it might be relevant. Centaur can't really be played. It's too difficult to get out, even though it's probably one of the best cards in a vacuum. Torferno, who's that? Doesn't get played. Blazers see some fringe play and like combo fire decks, but it's not good. Glauby, not good. Majesty, not like all these 2s and 3s in the set, except for like Full Tempest and a couple of 2-drops, are just not good enough. So it's nice to see 2s and 3s that you actually want to put into play because they can win you the game or do something immediately unless your opponent has like the perfect response to it. So I really like to see that in Frostfall going forward, and I think you guys will see that more going into Daybreak and such, where you can still play these 1-drop aggro decks, but now it's actually relevant to go to 2s and 3s in a normal game in elements outside of like water, which I think is awesome to say. So I'll catch you guys in the next reveal video, which I will be talking about more reveals on Saturday because there's some cool stuff coming out in the next 2 days that I want to talk about so bad, and they're finally coming out. So I'll see you guys Saturday with another spoiler video that will probably be kind of long because there's going to be a lot to talk about. See you then. Oh yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks.